right, so welcome everyone, and thank you, Kevin and SELPA team, Mid-Alameda County SELPA, for inviting Family Resource Navigators. So today we will be talking about reading the IEP, and more specifically, we're going to focus on the section called Present Levels of Performance and IEP Goals. And so before I dive deeper into that, just wanted to provide a brief introduction of Family Resource Navigators and what we do. And that, for those who don't know, FRN, or Family Resource Navigators, we serve Alameda County families of children who have developmental delays, disabilities, complex medical conditions. And really what we do as family navigators is to help families understand, learn, and connect the dots with their child's needs, whether it's education related or special education related. And other examples include Regional Center of the East Bay Services. So, just a brief, information about, just what we do in terms of parent support as well as professional support, and to provide workshops and informational sessions like this one so that it builds connections with the community and for all of Alameda County families. So again, thank you, Kevin and the Alameda County SELPA team for inviting us for tonight. And we're going to be talking about, as I mentioned, the IEP. Oftentimes it's called an individual education plan. You might hear it called individualized education program or individualized education plan. So, what the heck does that mean? And what, is involved in that document? So before we talk about present levels and the IEP goals, this will just be a brief review of just the contents of a standard IEP document in California. And what the IEP document contains, as you see on the slide, it's legally binding, but what it also means is that it's a contract with the child's family and with the school district. It's a plan that provides specially designed education and related services for a child who is eligible for with an eligible disability. And for those who might not know, there are 13 eligibility categories to qualify for specialized or specially designed education and related services. Part of what that document entails is that it provides free, appropriate public education for that child or student. And so again, what does FAPE, or free and appropriate public education, means? It really just means providing that specially designed instruction, supports, and services for that child and student. Other things that parents sometimes don't know about is that the document can be amended without an entirely new team meeting. The document is not written in stone, it's porous, it's can be amended, and in doing so, parents can request an IEP meeting at any time. We recommend that it's put in writing with their child's case manager or program specialist. It may differ in your child's school district. But when a parent makes the request, the school district has 30 days to schedule a meeting. And oftentimes in certain districts or certain areas, you might hear the phrase emergency IEP meeting. And even when that request happens, the school district is required to schedule a meeting within 30 days. So the IEP document is extensive, but what you see on the screen are the components of what it should contain. It should contain information and eligibility about this child or student. It should contain, if the child or your student is 16 years old, what's called an individual transition plan, or ITP for short. It includes the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, often shorthand called present levels, and that's what we'll be talking about tonight. It includes a section called special factors, And for those who don't know, that page usually contains areas such as, things like assistive technology that your child or student might need, behavioral intervention strategies and supports for that. So that is that section. Another component of the IEP document is annual goals, objectives, and benchmarks, and that's where we are another part of the IEP that we'll be talking about tonight, which bridges how present levels and IEP goals really tell a story about your child. Other components of the IEP document include what I've already mentioned, free, appropriate public education in terms of the services that your child or student will be receiving, and the offer of FAPE, or the offer of free, appropriate public education, also includes a section on educational setting or placement where your child will attend school, the type of classroom, and so forth. Another important part of the IEP document is the signature page. And this is where, if the parent agrees to the entire document, provides consent, and things like meeting attendees, those who attended the meeting, who often you might hear the phrase IEP team, they will also sign the meeting section that they attended. But ultimately, the parent signature is where you'll find that parent consent section where the parent agrees to the document. Usually at the end of the IEP meeting or the IEP document, there is a section called meeting notes. Sometimes parents and family members don't know that it's there, but the meeting notes are there really to capture the meeting topics in a factual way. And it's meant to be a consistent description of what happened during the meeting. So if you, as a parent, have your child's IEP document, handy, or if you're curious about reviewing what it contains, this is the components, and hopefully this is helpful for you. And if you think about it, the IEP document really, when you look at it as a whole, it tells a story of your child's current needs, and how your child or student will access the curriculum and receive free and appropriate public education services.
April, I just realized as many times as we went over this, we left out a section.
Okay.
And that's statewide assessments.
So statewide assessments are important, and that is also another component of the document. So thank you, Sid, for catching that. So I've talked about the IEP document, and so tonight we're going to focus just on two sections of it, present level of academic achievement and functional performance, or otherwise known as present levels. And what does that mean? I know it's a bit wordy. Even present levels is something that might be, for families new to the IEP process, might be complex to understand. But the components of it is that it contains evaluation information about your child or student and their educational needs. So for a child who's initially referred, it includes those initial assessments and reports. For a child or student who already has an IEP, it should contain triennial assessments, triennial as in every 3 years, when your child is reassessed to see if they're still eligible for specialized instruction or specialized supports and services. It should also include things like current classwork, observations across multiple settings, and part of the evaluation process, though it's not put on this particular slide, is that you as a parent, have your input. So it should also include, parent questionnaires. Sometimes it's helpful as part of your parent input in the evaluation process. Other parents have provided audio clips, video clips, just as a great way to show, capture what your child is doing. The present level is often described your child's disability and how it affects that child or student's participation and progress in a regular setting or in the general education setting, and some of the curriculum and supports that might be needed to help accommodate that child or student. Part of those present levels also incorporate what's called baseline information. And the baseline information is often, it should be measurable. It has, all of the components based on the evaluation information. The data provided leads to meaningful progress monitoring. And if you think about present levels of a particular child or student, this is really, it tells a story of that child, but this is the section that is really important because it helps drive the creation and development of IEP goals. So some of this, the categories at least of present levels, you'll see listed here. And what you see actually in the box is sometimes overlooked because of the way the IEP is sometimes partitioned or sectioned, but everything that you see here is really is a relevant part of present levels, the student's strengths, parent concerns, and I'm just highlighting that as a parent myself, is that frequently parents don't understand if their parent concerns can be addressed, and yes, there is a section where parents can provide any concerns that they might have related to their child's educational progress at school. And as Sid mentioned, standardized tests and scores, pre-academic, academic functional skills, and then types of development such as communication, gross and fine motor, behavioral, such as social emotional, and other areas such as vocational, adaptive daily living skills. And just to highlight on those areas, vocational, for those who might not know, is usually what your child is doing at the moment. So an example could be that your child is good at raising their hands. Maybe they'll might include vocational skills, as especially now with a lot of students using Chromebooks, maybe how many words they type in a minute, basically what they're doing at school. That would be in the vocational category. For adaptive and daily living skills, it includes things like toileting, going to the bathroom, eating, basic hygiene, dressing. And for students who use wheelchairs, the supports and services that they need really to be part of what they do at school. The health category, really health is anything that will affect a child's access to curriculum. And sometimes parents don't know that that might be an important component of present levels. But, just wanted to highlight mental health can be included, if the family is comfortable sharing that information. And just to point out that, when sharing the health information, it means that the local education agency, should have known about this because it was provided as part of the IEP. So for a student to receive educational benefit, goals will be written to address the following areas of need. And so we'll see an example of this in there in a sample of a real IEP. But this is, again, where present levels will tie into how goals will align with present levels. So I'm just, this is a snapshot of a real present level from an anonymous student. And so I'm not going over the entire thing, but what you see highlighted are just some of the categories that I just reviewed in the previous slide. That you'll see assessment information at the top. You'll see pre-academic and academic functional skills. And you'll see here for this particular student, it has areas, information or a narrative about reading, about writing, as well as math. You'll see there is a narrative about communication development. And, just briefly reviewing this, the student's communication appears to be age appropriate and has been working on self-regulation by labeling her frustrations and, taking sensory breaks as needed. So as I've mentioned, before, as a parent, when you're reading over your students' or your child's present levels, and as a professional, as you're reading over your students' present levels, is it capturing that child or student? And if it's telling an accurate story, then, this is providing a good snapshot. And so sometimes, if there are certain, I wouldn't say typos or just things that need to be clarified, this is probably a good time as part of the meeting to make sure any, again, typos or corrections are fixed, because we don't want to have them transfer over year to year as anything that incorrectly provides a snapshot of a particular child or student. And so again, this is where the story begins, and every year, the present level should evolve with the student. So it shouldn't be simply a copy and paste, but it's an accurate reflection of that student or that child. So I'm going into additional sections of present levels. And again, not going over everything here, but what you see highlighted are just really the categories. Gross and fine motor development. Here's a narrative by the occupational therapist. You'll see here social, emotional, and behavioral, which has a narrative provided from this child and student's functional behavior assessment, and with data collection. Vocational, as I mentioned, talks about, what the child or student is doing at school. In this case, you can see she is able to advocate for herself and express her wants and needs. For adaptive living skills for this student, appears to be age appropriate. And what I see here is that might need fidgets or extra reminders to stay on task. But those are again, a short narrative of the student's adaptive living skills. And for health, as I've mentioned, what the parents are comfortable sharing. And as you can see here, there's information about hearing and vision screening. And then what you see is just a note that, for parents who are listening, as well as, the professionals who are listening as well, it's include anything that does or may impair a student's access to the curriculum. And so I've mentioned that I'm a parent. So for one of my children who's deaf and hard of hearing, the adaptive living skills includes, the adaptive living skills as well as the health portion include just a section of that my child is able to utilize sign language. But in terms of the health portion, I have just dates of when we're hearing screens. So it just, again, provides an accurate snapshot and tells a story about my child. And then the last portion here, and this is where it dovetails into the creation of IEP goals. So for students to receive educational benefit, goals will be written to address the following areas of need. And so in this, what you see here is self-regulation, fine motor, mathematics, and writing. For parents who are listening, this is where, the IEP goals will align. There'll be IEP goals related to self-regulation, IEP goals related to fine motor, IEP goals related to mathematics, as well as writing. And so that provides really a snapshot of present levels. And Sid is now going to talk about how goals are, and Sid, you'll probably use better words for this, but really are a reflection of what's presented in the present levels.
Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about annual goals, objectives, and benchmarks. And I'm assuming most of the people who are attending a CAC meeting has seen a goal page, but just to remind you, there's at the top left, there's a section for area of need. Below that, there's a section for baseline. Upper right, there's a section for goals. Down below is an area for short-term objectives. Those are no longer required, but it is best practice to use them so you can know what to expect at what point during the year. And progress report. Progress report could be its own training, so we're going to really skip over that. This whole thing is just such an abbreviated version of what we're presenting, kind of like riding a motorcycle through an art museum. So hang on, buckle your seatbelts. Next slide, please, April. So these aren't going to look exactly like the goals you've seen in your IEP because they had to be edited a little bit to make them readable. So for this student, her area of need is sensory processing and self-regulation. I'm actually going to read this to you because it's relevant. So this says at her baseline, when the student is feeling overwhelmed or frustrated, she independently asks for a break 50% of the time. You'd think that would be a measurable baseline. When prompted, she's willing to take a break, also has sensory processing difficulties, and frequently displays high arousal during OT sessions. Examples, fidgeting in chair, distractibility. Proprioceptive input, such as jumping or bouncing on a ball, help maintain an optimal level of arousal to attend to tabletop tasks. Okay, remember this is the baseline. This is what she can do. When we go up to the goal, it says, when she begins to feel overwhelmed or frustrated, she'll be able to select and use appropriate tools for self-regulation, such as asking for a break or sensory strategies, as wall push-ups, bouncing a ball, given one verbal or visual prompt in order to optimally engage in classroom tasks. It's really unfortunate I can't see all of you because my question is, are the baseline and the goal related? Does the baseline describe what she can currently do in the goal that they're describing? And the hint is they're not. This would be so much more fun if it was in person. And so I have to go back and read that and say, what are they actually measuring? Oh, they're looking for her to choose appropriate tools for self-regulation. In the baseline, it doesn't give us any information about how often she's able to do this now. Think of the baseline as the starting point on a map, and the goal is this ending point. If I want to go from San Leandro to San Francisco, I have to know where I started in San Leandro before I can figure out the map how to get to San Francisco. This is the same thing. We don't know if she's made progress on goals because we don't know where she started with it. So this is a good thing for parents to look for when they're reading their child's goals. Any questions about that real quick? Okay. Next, please. This one's writing organization. There's a whole lot of text here on the baseline portion. And what you'll find is that providers who write the present levels will frequently cut and paste what they've written under present levels for the baseline here. There's nothing wrong with that. It just makes it hard to read. So when I'm queen of the world, I'll change all that, but it's not going to happen very soon. So we're going to have to just deal with it. So to figure out what the baseline was for this, I had to go to the goal and see that they want her to develop a well-organized grade-level multi-paragraph piece with supporting evidence as measured by word samples. So all the way at the bottom of that baseline, it tells that she is currently writing simple paragraphs and not including evidence in her writing. That's a terrific baseline. It tells me where she is currently and what I want her to do. Terrific. I just wish it wasn't word salad. And then you can see on the objective that the November objective is a 1 grade level paragraph, and the following objective is 2 paragraph piece. Next, please. I know this looks a little bit funkier, but forgive me. Her area of need here is fine motor and visual motor. This is awesome. Her handwriting is legible overall, but it can be difficult to read due to poor word spacing and baseline orientation. Good information. Based on handwriting sample, she is able to copy 4 sentences with 77% combined accuracy for word spacing and baseline orientation. Fantastic. And when we go up to the goal and read it, we will see that the baseline and the goal align, and it's very clear what we want her to do. However, I have one little thing that I picked out here. It said with minimal verbal prompts. In the baseline, it doesn't address what kind of prompts she currently needs. So that's sort of like throwing apples and oranges in that. And in fact, I could argue that those are 2 goals. One would be the paragraph, and Kevin may disagree, but we'll go out for coffee and have this conversation. One goal is about writing the paragraph, and the other one, because I know this child, is very valid. What kind of prompting does she need? And I think that that would have stood as an outstanding goal on its own. Next, please. So a little bit about progress monitoring. It could be its own training. So progress on goals must be reported to parents at least as often as report cards are given out. The frequency of the report is reported on the Offer of Faith educational settings page. Parents may not know the report has been provided or how to follow up if it has not been received. So one thing I want parents to take away from this is look at that page. Typically, it's the frequency is quarterly or trimester. High school, it's often by semester, and it will usually say goal progress report. This isn't optional. This is required, and so it's important that parents know. And usually, because it does track with report cards, we're looking at November, March, and June. So in November, I should be expecting a progress report. Did I get it? Sometimes teachers will provide it to the parent doesn't understand what it is. So it's important for you to watch out for that and say, is this just a report card, or are his goal progress reports included here? And if not, can we get those out? The importance of the goal progress is, and I think April mentioned this earlier, is the goals are part of the contract that the district has made with the family to provide these services and supports for the child. If my IEP was written in June of the previous school year, it's going to be important that I know in November, are these goals working? Are they too tough? Are they too easy? so they can be adjusted. Next slide, please, April. So this is a math goal, and this poor kid, I use her for so many examples. She's currently able to perform second grade arithmetic problems. Cool. So her goal is, given support, she'll be able to fluently add and subtract within 1,000 using strategies and algorithms based on place value. Addition, subtraction, 80%, 4 out of 5 trials. Is measured by student work, samples, or teacher records. So you can see in the first objective, bottom sentence of it, is that we want her to have 70% accuracy in 3 out of 5 trials. In the second objective, we're looking for 75% accuracy in 4 out of 5 trials, which will bring us around to the 80%. This particular format, and there are different kinds of, this probably is the most common, shows, and again, it has been cut off because so it would make it readable for you. So it shows the progress report number 1 and the summary of the progress. And that benchmark was met. So we found out that she was able to do 90% accuracy. We were expecting 70% accuracy, and she was able to do 90% with 90% accuracy. It further down marked that the goal was met, and the comment was that she met and exceeded her goal. My question is, and this is kind of rhetorical, if a benchmark is not met, then what? And the way I look at it when I read them, and so far this week I've read 6 IEPs. I'm lucky I can still remember my name. And my response would be, what if she was that first objective, she was at 65% accuracy. That's lower than what we had predicted, but is that okay? Yeah, it's probably okay. But to contrast that, what if she was only at 30% accurate? That underscores the reason why those periodic progress reports are important, because if a student is floundering, not doing well, we want to know that so that we can make a course adjustment, have an IEP amendment, talk about, was the goal too easy, too hard, and what do we need to do to change it? So everything I'm looking at is in context to the other information that's around it. The school district isn't obligated for the student to meet the goals, but they are obligated for the student to make meaningful progress. Next, please. And I think that's it. I know we went through that super fast, and it feels kind of abbreviated to me, but I'm going to let April close by saying, today, this is my last day at Family Resource Navigators. I'm retiring, but I am currently the special education specialist at Alta California Regional Center. And my email address is on there. So if you have questions for me, you can refer to the email address on there, and happy to have you reach out to me and ask questions. Your turn, April. April, there you go.
Yeah, I just had to find my mute button. So I can actually go back to particular section here. Yeah, just so all of you have just really a recap of what we had discussed. So for those who joined late, really this information workshop was really meant to capture how a child or student's present levels of academic performance, often shorthand called present levels, and what you see here, really how that tells a story about your child, and as the goals that Sid reviewed, how that transfers and builds upon really what was identified in those present levels. And I, as a parent, I'm just speaking about also about the importance of the progress reports and what she had mentioned about, and I'm just going back here in terms of progress monitoring, is that oftentimes, when I was a new parent, understanding the process that, oh, there's something called progress on goals, and it was a check-in on my child's IEP goals just to see how they were doing. And for those that caught it, that Sid mentioned that if a goal is too challenging, well, that's where you can request an IEP meeting to see, well, maybe we can make that goal or have that goal modified so that it's more achievable. Or if a goal has been met, then we can decide, okay, well, do we make that goal more challenging to the next level? Or do we just consider that goal met and call that a success? So again, really how present levels and the creation of IEP goals really go hand in hand, and how the whole IEP document really is a accurate reflection of your child. And for professionals, it's an accurate reflection of that particular student. And really it all ties together as
And April, I think that's especially true. Sorry, my son doesn't understand when I turn off my phone that I can't talk to him. With little guys, children who are just entering preschool, children who are just coming to a new school after moving. This isn't magical science. These baselines are gathered by professionals who are using appropriate testing instruments, but they don't have a magic wand or a globe. What am I trying to say? And so that's even more important why we should be monitoring progress on goals, so that when we get a new child, whether because he's young or because he's from a different school, we can measure that and we can monitor and measure and make corrections as necessary.
Yes. And I just wanted to highlight, I apologize for jumping around, but as we're, the document can be amended. It's not written in stone. And again, as we focused on goals today, parents and the IEP team can meet at any time. Parents request a meeting in writing for amended IEPs. The entire team doesn't need to be there, but those related to a specific goal can meet and say, okay, well, as I've mentioned, do we make this goal more challenging? Do we need to modify it in a way where it makes sense? And so some of the goals that Sid reviewed where they didn't quite align, if parents notice that, or an IEP team member notices that, that's where an IEP amendment can happen, where you modify a particular goal, because sometimes, and this has happened to me, what was intended, we all know the intent of a particular goal, but then when we read it after the fact, we're like, oh, if another set of eyes looked at it, it probably wouldn't make sense, even though the intention was there. So again, nothing is written in stone in terms of, the portions of the document, especially the goals. And so, Sid, if I mentioned anything that wasn't.
No, I think that was right on, April. And I think I would emphasize what you said about it being a story. Parents, especially when their children are young, can feel really intimidated by assessments and the whole IEP process because it's something new. But I truly think if you think of it as the story of your child, and each of those sections that April showed of the components of the IEP itself, are sort of chapters in your child's story for this year, as he is academically for this year. And so the story has to make sense. And so when I read an IEP, one of the things I look for is, does the story make sense? If I didn't know anything else about this child, does it all hang together? And if you break it down that way, it makes it a lot less intimidating, I think, for families.
And here, just my input from the parent perspective is, in terms of, what parents can provide, parents are part of the IEP team. And I had mentioned this earlier. So for those who join late, parents oftentimes don't realize that they can provide input on, any concerns or anything that needs to be addressed. What was mentioned that Sid actually told me earlier today is that some of the tips include, video, now that we have smartphones capturing, things that your child is good at or challenging, might find challenging on video or through audio. We have the technology now that to really provide that accurate snapshot. And really, the IEP is individualized, and as such, this is where you as the parent are, the most knowledgeable about your child, and this is where you have a piece in every portion of the present levels that you see here. So again, an emphasis on just how present levels are a reflection of those IEP goals, and how those IEP goals end up driving the services and supports and the specialized instruction that your child receives within the IEP document.
Questions?
Yeah, I didn't notice any questions, but
I haven't seen anything come up, and I haven't seen anybody raise their hand. But maybe that means you guys were super concise and understanding. And actually, I do see a question just popped up in the Q&A. We got, what and where academic benchmarks by grade level can be found to aid us parents in ensuring our special needs kids are able to access FAPE that maximizes their potential and capacity?
Well, I'm sorry, but somehow I just my iPad is talking to me. What you can find, not so much about what you asked specifically, but there are goal banks everywhere. And so, say for example, two things. First of all, goals must be aligned with state standards. So if we're talking about a math goal, we can look at what 6th grade math should look like, but then we have to compare that to what the child's assessed need is, or assessed ability in math. And so that's how they talk about some of the academic goals. If 6th grade, and forgive me because I can never remember standards, if 6th grade math is algebra, and the child can currently only write or add 2-digit addition, then we want to build on that. We can't go directly from 2-digit addition to algebra. But goals are supposed to be aligned with grade level standards in mind. There was a time when the attitude was, well, he can only read at 4th grade level, that's good enough. And so this protects children so that the goals have high expectations attached to them. The other thing, if we're talking about non-academic goals like behavior goals, executive functioning goals, look at some of the goal banks that are out there. There's no one best, but you get some ideas about, oh, here's my student's need. What might a good goal be written around that? And the reason I encourage parents to come into their meeting with their own draft goals is because the people who write IEPs write a huge number of IEPs every year. And they don't necessarily know your child. Well, of course, they don't know your child as well as you do. So putting your brains together and you saying, hey, I know you told me he has difficulty with organization. I found some ideas about what kind of goal we can write. What do you think? And that's where the teamwork comes in. They're experts on hundreds and hundreds of kids. So use their expertise and respect their expertise.
Yeah, and speaking a little bit more from kind of the district and SELPA side of things, I think collaboration is super key. I know a number of my case managers have conversations with families well in advance of IEP meetings, right? Because the bulk of those conversations where we're making decisions happen in IEP meetings, but input and receiving that information and having conversations about your child's progress are all things you can do with your teacher and case manager at any point, right? So if you have ideas about goals or have questions about what's going on, have that conversation with folks, right? And like Sid had mentioned, there's the state standards, if you're just looking for like academic standards to tie to. On IEPs, if there is tied to a standard, it should list what that standard is and reference it. And you can always ask as a parent, right? Because we as educators should be providing that information. What are we relating and tying these goals to? If they're academic, tied to some kind of state standard that's grade level aligned. And like Sid said, right, we're meeting the student where they're at, but it should be related to a skill at the grade level that they're in, right? So very key and important conversations to have. So just an input from our side.
And pulling the whole team in when you have issues or concerns, that's where the great problem solving happens. So back to what Kevin said about talk to your teacher, talk to your case manager. If there's an issue or a concern, talk to those people. They may not know that you have a concern unless you share it with them. And you certainly are going to have trouble finding solutions unless you use the whole team collaboratively.
We got another question from a family. It's a little specific, and I'll let you guys answer the pieces you're able to answer. For my son's case, 5-year-old, he is making a lot of progress in the academic goals in the IEP over the past 1.5 years. What he is struggling a little bit more with is vocational adaptive daily living skills like toileting. The IEP team is commenting that they are doing the best they can in the classroom setting at this time. Is it true that the IEP team can still exit my son on the IEP because the other goals, vocational adaptive daily living skills, are not quite addressed by the school district while he's doing well academically? Just curious on your thoughts. I have some initial thoughts, but I'll let you guys answer.
Yeah, when we don't really have time to get into the specifics, but the team, no one's allowed to exit your child from special education without assessments to show that he's no longer in need of specialized education and supports. And so I would hope that you would reach out to April with that question. She's probably going to want to see your IEP, because that's something that is a more involved answer than what we can give right now.
Yep. And just from like the district and SELPA side of things, right? I think it's absolutely right. Nobody can exit your student from special education without your consent, and any exit recommendation should be based on assessments that include academic and the other components, right? Vocational, adaptive, daily living, behavioral. So that should be part of the process. You can absolutely speak with family resource navigators if that's what you're interested in. But if you have a relationship with your district, I would also encourage you to speak with your case manager about your concerns and the district office, right? So reach out to a program specialist and ask those questions, because they can also provide their perspective and support, right? So you've got connections in the community with family resource navigators and hopefully your district as well. So, good question. Thank you.